Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Grace Pathway Podcast. My name is Matt Roberts. I'm the host, and we're so glad that you're tuning in for another good episode. We are all about telling stories of God's grace, what God has done in people's lives here at Pathway Church and beyond. And so, hey, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like, share, comment, leave all the stuff. We want to know who's watching and how this is being used to further God's kingdom. So I've invited a good friend of mine, Kai Strickler, to the pod, bro. Welcome, my man. How you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, thanks for having me on today.
Oh, man, are you kidding me? It's a privilege. It's an honor to be in the same space as you.
Man, I appreciate that.
Dude, we've known each other for a little bit. We went to school together at Simpson University. We'll get into all the meat and potatoes of your time at Simpson, my time there. Yeah. But, man, you recently got to come and speak to our young adults and share your story. And I thought it was so powerful. We can't just stop there. Oh. This is a story that needs to go beyond the four walls of this church and to beyond. And so, man, Kai, you're a husband, you're a father, you work a ton of jobs, you just out hustling, loving people. Man, and I thank you for taking precious time away from family, work, all that to be with us today. And don't take that for granted, man.
Yeah, that's a good word. I appreciate that. Yeah, that means a lot.
Yeah, bro. So, hey, we're all about stories. I know you got a story. So let's start, man. Talk to us about you, wife before Jesus, all of it. Like, where did life kick off for you?
Yeah, and I always think God, is always a part of the story. He's always working, right? And so, my story is no different in that regard. It's just a unique flowing story, I guess, of like how I got to where I am right now. And I say like so it seems like, being adopted was like, is part of that story, being like physically adopted, not just spiritually adopted, but also being physically adopted. And so that's kind of where that starts. And just two crazy people who had a heart that loved the Lord and were like, hey, they were like on the verge of potentially retiring, already raised their own family, and they were like, okay, they're just asking, what's next? And so why not like open our home and open our hearts and try to take care of kids? And so they started that kind of journey, and then they intersected myself along with countless others, but they chose to adopt 6 of us, and I was one of these 6.
So you were adopted. How old were you when you were adopted?
Officially, I was 10 years old, and so like in the adoption process, the foster care process is something that you're going to run into, and then with that, the state always wants to like give the biological family or family of origin like the chance to stay connected, to stay united, and they're all about like that reunification process. So it again, it becomes like a longer process, but officially, like I was 10 years old, and so there's like visitations to like go back to your family of origin, and then that was just kind of like there became like a cyclical thing because it was like just drug addiction, things like that, like a single mom like battling her own demons at that time, and just through that process, like, and I don't necessarily think like maybe adoption wasn't the original plan. But, it's kind of like, when you see like a stray dog and you're like, oh, they're kind of cute and you kind of like them. And then all of a sudden you get like an attachment, and I think like, some of that starts, my mom and dad, they got big hearts. And so I think as some of that started to play out, it was like, well, we'll just keep this kid or we'll just keep that kid. Wow. And they just started their little collection.
Wow. Collection.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So do you remember, I mean, I'm sure you do, what was life like before adoption?
Like it wasn't, they were all, it's kind of cool because like my parents were always there somewhere, like working in the background, working through the court system, working through those pieces like on my behalf. And I was, I guess probably not or too young to understand, all of the legality and what's really actually going on. But they were always there. And so, like they've always kind of had an influence in my life in that way. And so I've always been grateful for that. So, apart from God, it wasn't necessarily that they weren't around. They were, I'm sure they were praying I'm sure they were sending love. I'm sure they were probably sending supplies and food and groceries and things like that, just to make our lives easier. Let's say like when we were away from them. And so like that's kind of how my story begins, because you can just I think I always had the sense of their love and their presence.
Wow.
And it's just always been cool to realize, because they kind of had their own family, right? And so like they're bringing you into this family, and then so all of a sudden this becomes, a multi-generational, like multi-ethnic family that is just like, hey, like it was just cool to see, like, just kind of like being accepted, even before like I was officially adopted, right? Like just being accepted, being loved, and getting a chance to start off on a good foot, and not necessarily have to deal with some of the baggage. I still, there's some of that left in me,
sure,
but not having to deal with the baggage to the same probably extent that like some of my biological siblings had to.
Okay. Yeah. I can imagine the scars and the things that have probably been even suppressed over the years, from growing up in that broken of an environment,
right?
And I'm sure family members in and out, not knowing who's who, all that kind of stuff, and then you all of a sudden have these people that step in the midst of it, in the midst of the foster, in the midst of the care, and they're not like I'll say like a young family.
No.
Like, I think that's part of the story that I think is amazing, is like they, like you said, they've already raised their kids. Their kids are already like on to life, married and doing their own thing. Yeah. And yet their heart's so big, they're like, we're not done yet.
Yeah, I know. I can barely like raise two myself, and I'm like, they're just like, you just keep them coming,
Yeah.
Like it was.
So you had this whole family. You're 10 years old, and were you guys still living? You were I don't think we mentioned, but you were from Southern California, right?
Yeah.
So were you living in Southern California at the time?
Yeah. So it's like this kind of journey that like goes from like maybe like the projects to like Pasadena. To Palo Cedro. So
the projects, the Pasadena. Okay, got your P's in there.
Yeah, like
so you go from the projects eventually, and you end up in Palo Cedro, California.
Yeah, good old Palo Cedro,
bro. And as someone who doesn't necessarily look the part as everybody in Palo Cedro would, that's got to be like a culture shock in itself, man. What was that like for you? Yeah,
I think I always became like a kind of like a self-branded misfit. Like I think I just knew that growing up, but like also too, like, when that phrase like love conquers all, I think is probably the most important theme in life. Cause you know what I mean? Like that's what crosses like barriers and boundaries and skin color and generations. And you know what I mean? Like if you're truly like really gonna like sacrificially like love somebody and like teach them the right way and bring them up, like in the admonition of the Lord and biblical teaching, and trying to like be present and do all the things that like a good like mother and father would do, like regardless of age. I'm sure you're just praying the same prayer that like I hope this rubs off in the right way. I mean, I think they would they'd be like a testament that it did, right? That like love can conquer all. So
yeah, so good. So you're born into chaos, you get adopted out of that and brought into a different world, a different culture, but full of love and full of just different than probably how anybody would write it up themselves. Yeah,
I wouldn't write the story like that way. That's for sure.
Talk to me about where's God in all this, man? Because obviously I know God's been working things out your entire life, but when did you meet God for the first time?
Yeah, I think again, like through that kind of process of just like trying to like wrap your idea around like why would these two like almost senior age like white people like adopt? It's like why would they take in somebody who wasn't their own flesh and blood? And I think like you always just have that sense of like there must be something bigger going on here. There must be something deeper. There must be, and I don't know what the cry of my heart was, when I was a little kid, but I think it was just always like, you're seeing something. You're seeing something that's like worth at least considering. Like there's something deeper going on here.
Sure.
Like nobody just does that. Like ain't no white people just walking down to the hood and be like, I think I'll take that. Like it's not gonna like I don't know. That's like not normal, right? Like, and I'm gonna like do my very best to like love and support and give and raise and grow. These like tiny humans. right? Like, I mean, one of my little brothers, I remember, like, it's just like, one of my little adopted brothers, I was like, man, it was like one day, like we were at a Burger King. I remember, like, somewhere in Southern California, and it's like, and like my mom just rolled in. I think we were with dad, and my like parents just rolled up like with like a baby and in like a baby carriage. And it's like, this is your little brother. I'm like, what? They like went shopping again or something. I don't know. Like again, God. But I mean, that's like how it was, like
shopping again.
Like just hear it, like, and they just like, here's another one like, I don't know. Like, I mean, maybe it was like a rescue mission. Like, here's another one we can rescue. I'm like, I distinctly.
The hearts that are bigger than anything. Crazy.
So like I guess just naturally you kind of have like a curiosity of like, what's going on? Like, what's really going on here? Like, there's something,
something beyond. Like, no one is this kind enough.
Not naturally. Yeah. Right. Like, not like nobody's. Yeah. And I think like the biggest thing that I learned about kindness is like, I think that's the true definition of kindness is like, people think of it as like this weak, like kindness is a weakness. And like our culture presents it as that, like kindness is a weakness. And I just think like, their definition would be like kindness is, lending somebody else your strength. And like, that's what they did. Like when a baby can't take care of itself, like when a kid can't raise itself, like we will do that. Like that, that is, like the true, like the deepest, definition of kindness. Like that's what we're going to do. We're going to lend you our strength.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you step into this family. And then you guys move up to Palo Cedro.
Yeah. Like,
talk to me about that, man. Like, what was? How did you receive Northern California, being an LA boy?
Man, I loved SoCal. Like when I was a little kid, like I loved all the experiences. We had a cabin out in Big Bear. I loved going out to Big Bear. I loved going to Disneyland. Like I just loved all the,
Very SoCal life, yeah.
I loved like, living right down the street from your friends because like everybody went to the same school. And so it was like we just had like our little crew, man, that we'd always hanging out, after school, playing football or whatever. We were just all competing together, like at whoever's house it was. It ended up being like our house was usually like the community house, like because again, my mom just flings the doors open and it's like just inviting people in, building community, and it was like our house was always kind of like, and even when we got to Palo Cedro, it was the same. Like we got to that same level of just like community of being able to just open your doors and invite all your friends in, invite from everywhere, right? From like any different background, from any different like family status or socioeconomic status. It was just like, bring them over. Like anybody's welcome. Bring them over.
Wow. Yeah. So you created that. Was there ever a moment that you were like, okay, this can't be real. I don't like this anymore. Like, this is all facade, or I hate Reading, or I want nothing to do with God. Like, because it sounds like, I mean, talk about a powerful moment. You have these people that step into the brokenness, adopt you, take you as your own, see you right where you are, create this culture of love, community, everything. But sometimes I know, even though it almost feels like it can be too good to be true, and also it can feel like we can take it for granted.
Yeah. And I would definitely say, like, I think me and my parents, like, we definitely had our struggles, right? We definitely had our differences. You're growing up, like, again, there's, like, obviously, like, a huge generation gap, right? And there's obviously, like, a different, like, identity, as well in terms of, like, who am I versus who are you? And like, what about my past? And, like, what about these things? And like, so you're always going to have, like, your questions of, like, like, what, like, how come these people who are supposed to be my guardians, like, how come they didn't fight harder for me? How come we didn't do this? How come we weren't a family? And I guess even the most traditional sense of the word. But I just always think, like, and I put this little header, like, on my email signatures at work. It's the world has changed by your example and not your opinion, right? Like, so it's like, and when you think about it as a dad, a husband, or whatever, it's like more things are caught than taught, and that's like the same thing. It's just like, you just got to, like, you got to be that light. They were just that example, like, through everything, like, through the thick and the thin, like, through all the bad stuff. Like, it was just like, hey, like, we're still going to be here. Like, we're still going to put food on the table, and we just expect you to be there every night. Like, we're going to show up like you wouldn't believe on Christmas and birthdays and you know what I mean, like, and we're gonna pour everything we can, into you, like into whatever, like, you know, passions that you have, or like sports pursuits that you have, or like things that we're gonna do our best to try and like give you a chance, like, right, like give you that life. And so, like, I think you see God and all that because you're like you're just watching it. You're like watching it in real life, and you're like that's like you said, it can't be real, it can't be natural. It's like, and then you find out, you're like, it really isn't. Like, it is actually, supernatural. And obviously there's a time where your faith has to become your own faith and not your parents' faith. Right. And it's like, but I think, again, if I could go back to like that example always remains. So I'm like, there has to, I wanted to explore that. Like, and you're just thinking like, so why am I here? Like, what's my purpose here? Like, what's gonna, how is my life gonna play out? And I think one of the biggest things for me was, I wanted to, I think I always wanted a way out. Like, I always like knew there was something more. And, I go back to like, watching the Ninja Turtles growing up, and I always just thought like, there's 4 Ninja Turtles, right? And like the purple one, Donatello, yeah, he always like, they didn't like, he wasn't as cool as the other guys, but it's like they really needed him because he was smart, and he always wanted to use his brain to like get them out of a situation. And I always thought like, that's what I could do. Like I liked learning. I knew like I wasn't the best athlete, right? Like on my best day, I'm a C-, C+ athlete, somewhere in there. Like, so it was like, hey, but like I can work hard, I can study, like I can try to go to school. Like that just always seemed, even little tiny me, that just always seemed like learning was fascinating, and like that was gonna be, like the way that I could, kind of get out of the trap, or get out of like this area, or get like, so I just always had that dream somewhere like planted, in my heart.
Yeah. I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow, I'm going to find my purpose in that, which will allow me to then leave this area that has been home for so long.
And I put my family of origin on my back. Like, there was a lot of pressure with that of like, like nobody wants to grow up like this. Like nobody wants to be, like in this situation. Like nobody wants to be, fighting for survival on the streets. Nobody wants to be, living off of food stamps, getting their lights turned off. Like nobody like actually wants to do that. But I think like I always had this thought process of like, well, I can, like if I make it out, like if I can get an education, if I can do these things, then like good things will happen, and I could like, I could bring everybody with me. Wow. Right? Like
that's a big job. To try and So was that the goal? Like for you, was that the goal of like, all right, I'm gonna do what I gotta do, learn what I gotta learn, so that I can go back and fix it?
Yeah. I think, and maybe like that's probably too much pressure to put on like a little kid.
But for not having an example besides your adopted dad, to not have that example in your life. I mean, you're probably going, this is probably my mess. I got to fix it, even though it's not yours. You just happen to be a part of it.
I happen to be a part of it, and I think that's just how I always look at life. Like, I guess what can I do to make the situation better? Like, what can I do to fix it? Like, I can get involved, and that was gonna be my thing. It's like, okay, like we'll get, do this, work hard, go to school, get a job, like come back, like bring everybody out. Like, just I always felt that, like that responsibility. Even though I was probably like too little at the time to do anything anyway at that point.
So then, when you get of age, right, and I'm sure we're obviously getting the spark notes on your life, because we could probably here all day and write a book on this.
Maybe one day.
One day, man. I think you should. But so you graduate high school.
Yeah.
By the way, my wife and you went to high school together.
Yeah.
So I knew about you more than I even knew you at first.
Yeah, we had the same friend group.
Yeah, which was cool. But she's always loved you. But you have this opportunity, you graduate, and were you thinking, I'm out? Like, get me out of Reading. I've done this. I've been the black guy in a very white town. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, that was a struggle. Like, I remember like I fought, a lot with my parents, like back and forth, like, but I think there's also like a maturing that has to happen, like,
For sure.
because like, maybe they saw what I couldn't see, and it's like, okay, but regardless, like, you still gotta go there with a plan, right? So like, I was just a young, cocky 18-year-old. Like, I didn't have a plan, but I was like, but I can still fix it.
No
like,
plan, no problem. I got this.
You can't, no, yeah, that doesn't go well, right? Like,
Right.
normally you can't fix stuff unless you like have a plan, and I didn't have a plan, like, and like sometimes, I hear that in Christianity, like, it's just like, oh, like God's got me. Like, I'm gonna just go do this thing and God's got me. And I'm like, it doesn't always necessarily work out like that.
Well, he's also given you a brain, and so, and that's not to say anything towards you. I just know in my own life, he's like, there's times I've been like, God, catch me. And and he's like, I'm like, trust fall, but I'm leaning the completely other way. It's like trust fall, and I'm falling forward, and he's behind me.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
you went the wrong way.
I'm not even caring about where he is in the process.
I think that was a danger, like for me, just not understanding, like, and again, I mean, what was I going to do? Like when I was 18 years old, like what was I really going to do? Like, so I stayed, and I, like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this JUCO thing and like see where that road takes me. Maybe just kind of explore some of my talents and my giftings. And then, So I started that process, and then like even in there, I think I always had that chip on my shoulder because of that. Like I was like, I feel like I'm supposed to be there. I feel like I'm supposed to do this thing, and so then I like resentfully, I think, like stayed, in Reading.
Stayed in Reading. And you end up going to Simpson University, which I know you were so excited about going to Simpson because your dad worked there.
Yeah, Red Hawk Nation, Yeah, totally. Yeah, and so like I went to Shasta. I had a plan like that had nothing to do with Reading after my 2 years at Shasta were done. So I applied to some places, and then there was like this really weird time like in the state schools where they were like cutting a lot of funding, cutting a lot of classes, and like I remember friends were like, they were like getting stuck on their grad courses or their requirements to graduation because it was like sometimes because they cut a lot of the stuff at the state school at that time, it was like they had to like wait one extra semester to get into this class because they only offered it in this semester. And so like a lot of that was going on. So then I'm applying, I'm going, I don't know if that's going to work. And then I applied to Simpson, and like Simpson, I mean, their acceptance rate at that point was just like, if you have a heartbeat in a checkbook, like we'll take you. And so then I like, the mail comes, like to my door that's like, congratulations, you've been accepted to Simpson University.
Sure.
And like, this is like going to high school all over again in my mind, right?
Yeah.
Like, nobody local wants to be here. Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you go to Simpson reluctantly, kind of like kicking and screaming a little bit.
Yes. Very much so.
Like, I don't want to be
Not
here.
even a little bit. Like, very much so.
Just like,
yeah.
and that's where we met. But I think I met you later on after you had, I knew you were there, but like we were in different friend circles. But then eventually we started to hang around a similar person but then I remember you just like something changed in you where you were becoming like the life of the party. You were the guy that everyone wanted to be friends with at Simpson.
I think, that's funny. I think, like, again, it just goes back to that word, like community and like finding a community, like where you're at, right? And there was a purpose, and I look back and I understand, a little bit of the sacrifices of, again, like, my dad who could have retired, then he doesn't, right? And then he's like, all right, I'm going to bring these, I'm going to bring these kids into my home. And then like he could, and then like we're all to that, getting out of the house phase. And then like, he like chooses to go back to work again, to work at Simpson, to like, so it's like you just see this
to help financially.
Yeah, like you just see
crazy
this theme like threaded through, and I'm like, I mean, I don't even do, dude's like, I think 67, 68 plus years old, right? Like just working again, like way past the working age, but he doesn't really believe in retirement. Like he's probably doing something right now, and so. I think you see that, and that's kind of coupled with like building community and like understanding that Simpson is kind of maybe like designed that way to like build community because it's a little bit smaller. Mm-hmm. Your class sizes, like and your friend groups, and just naturally the people that your lives are crossing over, become a little bit more intimate. And I think like, obviously like if I didn't know what I needed, like I think God knew what I needed and God got me, because like then I was able to create like, longer lasting, like closer, intimate friendships. What was what I needed, like when I felt like I always had this sense of like abandonment, and I had like trust issues that like come from the chaos of childhood and things like that, and like not being able to trust, but really being able to like let people in and like break down some barriers and like build strong friends who had a faith foundation. I think was pretty helpful.
Well, I mean, and to your credit, I mean, to be born in what you were, you automatically assume the worst. You automatically don't trust, and then on top of that, then you have these Christians, and I'm sure it's like you've experienced both hot and cold. People who are like all in, and then you got the ones that are like, yeah, I say I'm a Christian, but I'm gonna stab you in the back behind, and then you go to a Christian school, and you're like, there's no way that the people who are there are actually there because they love the Lord.
Nah, I became like kind of disenfranchised, and like I became distant and standoffish, and like there's a lot of people who just came through that time, in my life that like really were like genuine, and also in the fact of like kind of like understanding like everybody comes with a story, right? Like everybody comes with a baggage and things that they're struggling through and with, and like just because you showed up right at a Christian university, that doesn't mean that it was like all rainbows and sunshine and roses and like everybody's like kind of has you'd be surprised at some of the people that you meet with like either similar stories or stories of maybe even like worse trauma, and I'm like, dang, I didn't really have it that bad, right? Like, and so you're starting to hear and see some of those people that are like in your classes and living life right next to you, you know what I mean? And they're all trying to figure it out too. So
yeah, and it's a different culture, because when you're on campus, you feel like you're at Christian summer camp on steroids. Like I stayed in the dorms, and so I know like it was like there's like prank wars and everyone's having a good time, and you're playing basketball till midnight, then you go out to Denny's and it's Dutch Bros, and there's like, and then you rinse, recycle, repeat. Like it's just you're living like this unrealistic life that you're like, it's only for then. But you weren't even there because you were not a transfer, you were a commuter. So
right,
you were
totally.
Yeah, so you already had another layer of like obstacles to jump in.
When I started like getting deeper into like some friend groups, I do remember some of that stuff like happening. I mean, just like crazy stuff like Nikki Whitmer's car being on blocks, like in the gazebo, like just like I just remember like kids like like riding shopping carts down that hill, and like so there was like crazy stuff going on, and like I mean, and it was like kind of cool and like
innocent fun, innocent fun,
innocent fun, like
absolutely, But that's the stuff that like you look back to, like you said, it's those relationships that you form. People that cut through the barriers are willing to pursue you even when you don't want to be pursued.
Right. Yeah.
People who are. Yeah. We have a mutual friend, Ian, who literally showed up at your doorstep.
Yeah. There's like a list, man, of like just male and female, like just different people who like came in, like at that time, like Ian Sturck, he's a big one. I mean, I look back at like people like Mitch Kellogg, and I look back at people like Jessica Sweepy at the time, like people who are just like, dude, we're just gonna love this dude and wherever he's at. And it's kind of the same thing of like, getting adopted all over again. Essentially like into a different group of like genuine people.
Just there's something so powerful about being known.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things of like, it's why we push being known so hard at church, because it's like you can come to church, you can sneak into church, you can sneak out of church.
Yeah.
But when you take that step of like I'm stepping into community to like be known, like it's scary.
Yeah.
Because in order to be known, you have to first pull back some layers.
Vulnerability is hard.
Yeah, but in order to get vulnerability, you have to first offer vulnerability, and so you graduate. And I'm sure in the back of your mind, you're like, cool, now I'm ready to go.
I'm finally leaving. I'm finally leaving Reading. Like,
and I know we talked about this over lunch. You said something. You said something like, I get the people that people would describe as the misfits.
Yeah.
You even said yourself, like, I identify as someone who was a misfit, like the I Want to Misfit toys.
Yeah.
And so
that was me, man.
You know, to like that heart to go like, I get that. I'm gonna go back to that. I want to help make an impact at that.
Yeah.
After experiencing love and community and all that is super honorable and noble, man. But you didn't go back. You're still here.
Yeah, I'm still here because I think like, you know, again, it's just the reality of the lesson that you learn. Like you can build community wherever you are, right? Like if you are willing to like put yourself out there or go, or like not just be a consumer and sit in the back, but like get your hands dirty, like get in the mess with people, right? Like and be okay to be messy. And you know, I think like life taught me that, you know, like learn some of those lessons throughout Simpson, and like being able to like get into different like missions trips, and like just, you know, like really doing work with, again, some of these individuals that we had mentioned, you know, and just like seeing that like, man, they really did have like big hearts that loved God and like wanted to serve and like wanted to, you know. And I think like everywhere you go, like you can find, you know, if you're willing to serve, like you can connect to like your purpose or your calling. Like
that's if you're willing to serve, you'll get connected to your purpose and calling. That's good.
Yeah,
that's good. Put that on a bumper sticker, man.
Let's do it.
Let's do it, bro. No, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, and then that process, like, dude, now to see where you are. I mean, you work with people of all different ages and stages.
Totally, like, it makes sense, right? Like, you know, I mean, he doesn't, you know, like, what's the saying, right? That cliche, like, he doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And it's like, and your life is like that qualification, right? Like, it's like, yeah, some people have fancy degrees and things like that. And it's like, some people just have that life experience that is connected to, you know, like, because that's the human experience, right? Like the human in me wants to connect to the human in you. There's something like inherent in all of us, right? By design. Yeah. And I think that, like, you know, your experiences can lead you that way. And that's kind of like where it's been. And so it kind of made sense, like when I started to see some of that stuff of like, oh, you're just gonna, like, you know, go be a teacher. And I'm like, well, I don't know what else to do. And it's like, and everyone who, right, it's like, again, another saying, they say like, everyone who can does, and everyone who can't teaches, right? And like, that's kind of like, that's always like the slap of like, you know, the slap in the face to like liberal arts degrees and studies and things like that.
Hey, we love liberal arts degrees, by the way. We got kids now. We're very grateful.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And so I think, you know, like, there was a dissatisfaction with like trying to go through the teaching credentialing program and like just being like, okay, like, am I just going to be, you know, another average history teacher who just like, you know, you got these kids a dime a dozen, you know, and it's like they would probably pass high school, like whether or not they had you or somebody, right? As long as they just had a person who could like sign off if they knew what they were doing and then like pass them through, like it'd be like herding cattle. And I think like there was something inside of me that was like, but what about like those other kids? Like, what about those kids that like nobody really actually wants? Like, I get that. Like, just that feeling, that understanding on like maybe a different level. And like, what about those kids that like are like genuinely struggling? Or what about those kids that I guess people forgot about? Or like, you know, those kids from the island of misfit toys, right? Like, you know, you got the broken Jack in the Box and things like that, right? And like, what about those kids? And so like there was avenues that people, you know, that I trusted and mentored me, like pointed me toward, and like pursuing those. Again, you're right. Like it's not just kids now that I'm working with in that sense. It's also adults who, in that sense, like kind of the adults again in the same world of like the adult residential facilities, like that people have either like, you know, they've written off, right? Like, you know, and I'm just like. And then I kind of, again, get that chip on my shoulder, and I'm like, get the Geno Smith, right? Like, they wrote me off, but I didn't write back.
That's right.
Right? And, like, that's kind of where, you know, I you know, kind of get some of that strength from is, like, these are, the, like, who else? If not me, then, like, who else is going to do it, right? Yeah. Like, and so.
Dude, I love your heart, man. And I think, but I also know it's, like, God has uniquely equipped you and allowed you to, but you've also had to choose it. Right? Like, people can't, I mean, people can want what they want for you all they want, but you have to step into that and want it for yourself.
Yeah.
And for you to want to make a difference, to want to enter into the mess. Dude, I just think it's one of the most noble things in the world.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you for saying that. That means a lot. I think, you know, and I'm aware, like, I feel like, you know, like some of, you know, kind of like my parents' heart rubbed off on me, like in that big heartedness way. And then like, But, along with that, like, balance has to come into play because, like compassion fatigue is real, right? Like it's,
Yeah, you become numb at some point.
Yeah, like you're just very like you're either like desensitized or you're like over passionate, like I can fix you, right? And it's like this isn't the like no you can't.
No,
yeah.
you don't have anything to offer except for what, and obviously being a Christian, you got that's a fine place. I can love them through my experience, but I can also love them through the power of the Holy Spirit working through me.
Right.
And that really is the only thing that's going to change them is them experiencing a life transformation of Jesus.
Right. And again, you're the salt, right? You're the flavor, you're the light, right? Like, and that's what you're called to do and be. And like when everything's going well, right? It's like super easy to forget that and like rely on yourself or your accolades or your laurels or your life experience. Like, no, I've went through this, but again, like every situation, is unique. And so, one of the ways, which is just what my parents did for us, it was like one of the ways is just like really trying to like teach kids boundaries around certain things of like who you are, who you're trying to be, right? Like, and understanding like high school is like such a temporary time, right? But like, you can really either like you can truly get it right or like you can really mess it up like in 4 years, and like 4 years goes by real quick. And so I try to like kind of instill that into some of the students that I'm working with. It's like if we can offer boundaries, if we can offer like, look, you gotta set your life up right, like because the choices that you make, right, like in the end, like those choices are gonna make you. Right. And they're going to make you who you are or who you aren't or who, and it's like I just don't want them to live with like that many regrets. Right. Like we all got, maybe some regrets, but it's like the least amount of regret we can live with, like the probably better off we're going to live.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and that's key on, wisdom, that discernment of I'm going to glean what I can from others versus learning from experience, which is the tougher of the two teachers.
Yeah.
And,
no joke.
And so I know and you've experienced a lot more experience, but you've also been blessed to have wisdom pouring into you from family and education. And so that, but I love now is you are in a position in both your jobs, and then you have a third job, which now you work here at Pathway.
I do.
And you're helping coach our leaders on how to be better leaders, especially with the ones that would be considered misfit toys.
Right. Yeah.
And that's like the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Man.
In the training, we called them dragons, right? And we did an exercise on like how to train your dragon. And it was,
yep.
And it was like good just to kind of like again identify with that, but just be able to like kind of share some of that stuff. From my experience, but then also from like my educational side as well of like, taking some of those theories, right, and those things that you read in the books, and like trying to put them into practice in real life. And and again, it's important, right? Like for in Ephesians 4, you talk about the equipping of the saints for the ministry, right? And it's like you just gotta, again, I think, be willing to be involved. Like,
just take a step. Yeah. So with that being said, because I feel like I didn't plan this, but it just happens to be perfect in this regard. You're now here, you're serving, you're leading. What would you say to someone who's maybe on the fence about Jesus, God, church, getting involved, being known, right? Taking that step of like plugging in, and what would you say to somebody? Maybe an older self, right? A version of you, maybe back in the day, you're like, I don't need that. I don't want that. Because we got people all over, older, younger, it doesn't matter. It just like we got people who are different stages who are coming, who, and maybe they don't even realize how much they really need it. And that's why I'm a firm believer of like the church does not exist to get something out of you. We're not here to try and like squeeze, we need you to fill this slot. The church exists to really help you and give you opportunities to walk into your potential, to then discover how God wants to, use you for the work of Him, and it's the coolest thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of narratives, man. There's a lot of labels. There's a lot of like things, right? Scripts that we like hang on to that are running through our head, and like I think my biggest one for me was coming from a situation of like not knowing, sometimes like early in life growing up, like not knowing what's going to happen, or like, or why do I have to go back here, or why do I have to go back to these people, and why do I have to go, and then what are we doing here? And so like I think a lot of fear happens, like where you kind of operate out of like a sense of fear, and like you kind of live your life in that way. And like I would just say, I'd echo Joshua 1:9. I would just say, fear not, right? Like, I mean, I think that's the most important thing. It's probably one of the most repeated phrases in the Bible, right? Because, and that's where, like, I'm trying to focus on this word courage for the year. Like courage to be vulnerable, courage to be, to trust that, like, I'm going to be taken care of or held with love or known.
Yeah.
Or like in my personal relationships, like in my relationship with my wife, like in my relationships at work, like to have that human connection, and not be afraid of like getting burned again, right? Or getting like abandoned or getting let down. So it's going to happen.
Yeah. And you had to say Joshua 1:9 because that's where my mind's been all week. And so,
there you go.
But it's confirmation after confirmation, like I was telling you earlier. But even in that verse, the reason why God is telling Joshua to be strong and courageous is because of the promise that he's with him.
Right.
And I think that's one of the most beautiful sentences and truths that we can learn about is when you walk with God and you recognize that God is your Savior and God's not a one and done. He's not like, cool, now you're saved and I forget about you. I'm just floating around. He's like, no, I'm doing life with you.
Yeah.
From that comes the courage and the strength to step into whatever God has for you.
And then there's going to be people in there that are like trying to call you into that as well. And I think like that's where, like people don't just like accidentally meet, right? Like I don't think
there's no coincidence.
There's no accidents, right, or coincidences, as you would say, and like you have to step into that, because like that's how it goes, right? Like that's how the experience goes. It's like it's through people that you've met along the way, right? That like you've now become part of their community and they become part of yours, right? And then you build that, like you build that network of humans that that you can trust, like that you can rely on. Whether it's like, whether it's a best friend, like whether it's, a different father figure, in your life, whether that's like a pastor or whether that's someone who's just like willing to show you the way, encourage you and love you through the process of it all.
So good. So good, man. I'm so glad that God has you here. I'm so glad that God's got you at Pathway. I'm so glad that God has brought you and your family here. And so, man, thank you. I know we could sit here for hours, but dude, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and bless us, bless the pod with your story, man. I just want to say I appreciate you. Bless you, my friend.
No, yeah, I appreciate you doing this, man. I really do think, lives are getting changed here at Pathway, and I see it every week. So again, it's just not like that confirmation, like this is where you're supposed to be. So thank you.
Yeah, bro. It's an honor.